My mother and father split when I was very young, and ironically enough, if you look over my shoulder, there's a picture of me. I'll show it to you. Um, when I was about 3, and this little girl right here had been through more than any 3-year-old should ever know. Um, and I can recall as early as the age of 3, being locked in a bathroom and with my sister, my older sister, and my mother saying, no matter what you hear, don't come out until the police come and get you. And she put a phone in there. At the time, we have the long cords that you carry the phone around. And that was finally her breaking point. And she had reached a point of either he was going to die or she was going to die tonight, but she couldn't live like this anymore. And I can recount what that felt like. I can recount what was said, even at that early age in life. And my mother and I and my sister found ourselves in the need of shelter houses services, and she got sick is what happened. The stress of it all, my mother ended up hospitalized with toxic shock syndrome, and she was hospitalized for a month. She had been working multiple jobs, and just a compromised immune system from dealing with the stalking and the harassment and all of that. It was very rarely physical in terms of him actually hitting her, but it was more of the threatening, the stalking, the saying, I will do this to you, using his body and size to intimidate and stand over top, to the point where I could do this to you if I wanted to, or I'll kill you and they won't even do anything about it. Making those types of statements is definitely a form of abuse. In the beginning, it's a little cutesy, and my mother can recall a storm that was horrible, and my father didn't have a vehicle, and the roads weren't plowed, and he walked, despite the fact that she said, well, we'll see each other after this, and he walked 7 miles in a blizzard to see her, and she said even then it was a little a little concerning, but you're a little bit flattered too, like, oh, he would do all of this for me. The same thing that drove him to do something like that is the same thing I think that helped to fuel when she was trying to split from him and saying, no, I don't want you here. um when it got to the point where he's showing up and you're beating on your door or calling obsessively, and you said, please, like, I don't want to talk to you. At the time, we were living in an apartment complex, and the apartment complex had to cut the trees down behind our building because he had climbed the trees and trying to see into the windows. Our neighbors started staying up in shifts so that my mother could sleep, so that she could go to work, to keep an eye out to see if he was going to show up or be lurking about. Um, when you find yourself being, you look in your rearview mirror and there he is. It's unwanted, uncalled for, and not acceptable in any stretch of the imagination. That's harassing behavior. When you have to block numbers and they call from other phone numbers, to get around that. Um, and I've mentioned before that my mother got into a car accident and actually jumped out of the car at the accident site because she could view the school I was at, and ran the rest of the way because he had called and told her that he was going to take me from school. And she had tried to notify the school and contacted them, and they said they were going to keep me indoors at that point. But she was just so fearful. What would he do? What would he go into the school? Again, that goes back to the threatening and the different types of abuse. Like, what is he really capable of? I don't know. It's a trauma that stays with a child, and it has to be addressed. I found myself in an abusive relationship as a teen, and there was a part of me that felt like, how could this happen? I know better because I've experienced this. But as an adult now, I realize that's why it happened, because I had experienced this. I had never dealt with it. And that was my first and the only, first boyfriend. I didn't really know anything different. So here I was learning how someone is supposed to treat you, I guess, or thinking that's perfectly okay. It was the name calling, or you're already in kind of an awkward stage and not being sure of yourself and exploiting those insecurities and saying things to you, whether it be your weight or something of that nature. I was embarrassed. I wanted my mother to like him, so of course I couldn't tell her all the horrible things that he was saying or doing. And the reality is, it wasn't always horrible. And that's sometimes what we have to remember, is that the abuser is not a big bad wolf monster that is 24/7 horrible. Because how would they ever get you to the point of liking them or loving them if they were always awful? And that wasn't the case. I can remember some really great times, a lot of fun, and good attributes that I could still speak about to him now, but it doesn't matter. None of that matters. The bad was bad enough. As a teen, especially, it feels like the end of the world if you thought your relationship might end. What on earth could I do if this ends? What would happen? Where would that leave me? Who's going to love me? All of those things that come with it, or it's not that bad. Well, he only does this, and he doesn't always do this. So a lot of that, talking myself out of what was acceptable and what wasn't. The straw that broke the camel's back for me, as ridiculous as this sounds now, thinking back to it, but this is just the reality. It was, he cheated on me, and it was in my face. I found out about it, and that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. Now, in the moment that I found out about it and confronted him about it, he did become physical with me in that moment, because even though he was wrong as a $3 bill in it, he became physical with me. I went to my mother and I didn't try to hide, that he had pulled my hair. At the time, my hair was braided, and he had pulled like braids and it pulled it out by the root. And I told her that he had attacked me, and this is what happened, and everything leading up to it. So one would think it would have been the physical part of it, but it was more of my heartbreak, the emotional piece of it, that led me to say, this is what's been happening. When you think that trauma is normal and you've accepted it as a part of life, when it shows up, it's not quite as alarming as the kid who's never experienced that. But the beauty is that if they do live through it, is that you can heal from that. It's just important to try to intervene as early as possible and to get them the support that they need. And it may not be in that moment, they may not be ready, but you keep at it and continue to offer them the support that they need. And eventually there is that breakthrough, there is that healing on the other side of that for the family as a whole. Therapy has been so critical for me because there was a little girl there that was still not healed and was still hurting, and had packed away some of it so far and so deep that I thought it didn't exist, but it was showing up in every way possible. So for me, just thinking about it was exciting for me to embark upon a different type of being, a being that didn't come with hurt. I've been fortunate with being a part of Shelter House. It's afforded me the opportunity to speak out, and it's been therapeutic in itself, for me to share and unpack some of my experiences with domestic violence. Probably about 2 years ago, after a phone conversation with him, and I got off the call and I said, whew, like, I'm so glad he wasn't around. It's sad, but I could reach a point where I would say, I can't imagine how draining my life would have been if I would have had him as a part of it every day, or how more dysfunctional I would have shown up in the world if I was subjected to that daily. So I was able to realize, that there's power in healing, and that I didn't experience this Father's Day of feeling sad or envious of people who had their father in their life, because I realized my father is a broken person who couldn't show up as the person I would have needed him to be, or I would have liked him to be. Um, and you get to that point where you will see eventually the abuser for the broken person that they really are. And when you get to your point of fullness and wholeness, that doesn't even have the same impact on you anymore. With DSVS, it's important for folks to remember that you may not be experiencing the abuse today, but the abuse is still there. The impact of the abuse is still there. And maybe you got out of the one situation that was abusive, but I promise you, without addressing those issues, that person will show up again in a different package. But it will be the same issue. So it's critical for you to get the counseling services that are available. There are resources out there to do just that. Whatever it is that you're thinking in the back of your head of what you might want to do, there are actually steps that you can take to make that happen.